young, but at some point in an effort to like save the marriage, my mom wanted us to be Mormon. And so we were Mormon when I was a little kid for like 6 months or something, went to church and then didn't at some point. And when I was maybe 11, 12, I had moved. I was living with my dad alone and with my sister, but he was single parent. We moved to a new house and found out that one of the neighbors was a person from the Mormon church where we had gone like 5 or 6 years ago for a short amount of time.
Okay.
And so she was like, "Oh, you girls are here, like great, like do you want to come to church with me?" And so she started inviting my sister and I to go with her. And I went with her for maybe like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. Mm-hmm. And even at that age, I was conscious of how over that short amount of time, hearing my dad, who cusses a lot, like it started to feel like a negative impact on me. Just hearing the word fuck or hearing him say something like cringe inside because I was internalizing a certain narrative. And even just that short amount of time that it was bad, this idea of something right versus wrong. And I think that is why spirituality in general and why I'm so open to different, like picking and pulling different pieces of different traditions has drawn me more than any other structured, organized religion, because the undertone of all religions that I see as harmful is that it teaches God and the relationship with God as a hierarchical thing, where it's not God is within you and outside of you and is everything. It's like God is here and he's in you too, made in his image, but only if you behave yourself.
And it puts gatekeepers there. The figures of the church or the establishment, they're the gatekeepers, so and when they have power, that power corrupts, absolutely, and that's what happens.
And it even trains your inner voice to become a gatekeeper for yourself. Well, then it's like you're judging yourself or others around you as right or wrong. Internalize like, good means you get something good and bad means you get something bad, and like it's just not true. Yeah,
and then you have that. I mean, as a Mexican Native American, you have that Catholic guilt, obviously because of Spanish and all that, and ancient times, Catholicism, Mexico. But you have that internalized Catholic guilt. But I wanted to ask you about growing up being a Mormon. Do you remember, like, actively when your mom's friend invited you? How old were you then?
So I went for about 6 months when I was like 5-ish, maybe 6, and then I went for about a month or 2 max when I was like 12.
Okay, when you're like 12, do you remember a lot from it, or in general? Because I have no experience with Mormon things. I
remember certain things. Yeah, like I remember that the dress code is incredibly strict. I remember that. And me, like, this has been a thing my whole life. It just happens to be very compatible with my hippie life now. But even as a young child, I like hated clothes, hated them. Like just the feeling of it feels restrictive. Like I just don't like clothes for the most part. And like little girls, you have to wear your nylons, you have to wear a certain type of shoes, you have to wear the dress, you have to like, it's like robotic feeling, kind of feels like you walk into a time machine. Where it's dressed the same and it's all like, and so just things like that, just kind of like the essence of that spills out into everything, how everything is done. There's nothing that feels casual. It's all very rigid and orderly, and it's a 3-hour long service. It's dense, like it's very serious and dense. And so that's what I remember, being very bored. And like, it's not engaging for kids. So for children, at least, I don't know how it goes as an adult, but for kids, it's an hour in this like shared service space, sermon, whatever they call it. And then an hour of all the kids together, and then an hour of kids separated into their own age groups. So 2 hours is like kids doing just kid things. And even during that, with like snacks and songs and all those other kid friendly things, it's not fun. Like it's very much, it feels like school more than anything else, where it's like the vibe is clear that you're there to learn something and like learn well. There's an expectation for you to learn it well. And I just remember that and feeling, even at that age, 5, 6 years old, feeling like a little bit of like shame or embarrassment that I didn't know the Bible stories and all the other kids knew and things like that. So it's very much a performance feeling thing.
like it's, yeah, performance. That's a good word for it. The gist I get with a lot of religions, the ones that I've experienced or have secondhand experience with, is that it's almost like you go in already down so many points and you have to redeem yourself. I've never seen a church where you go in and it's like, bro, you're the best and you're up there. It's all about knocking you down a couple pegs and you have to redeem yourself. You have to prove yourself worthy of the God, of this religion. And that's something that I've always felt, it's like, and people have different approaches to it. Because my experience, I've never experienced Mormons, but I've experienced Jehovah's Witness churches. And just like any other 14-year-old in my city, the reason that we end up in Jehovah's Witness church is because we're trying to get with a girl. Like there's a girl we met at school. There's some girl we met at school, and she's like, "Oh, come to church with me." And you're like, "All right." And it's funny because like you show up and you stand out immediately because they wear suits. Everyone wears suits and ties, and there's every now and then there's this guy that come in with a dress shirt or something semi-casual, but not a suit. And that those guys are here because they're trying to talk to some girl. But the people, they allow it. They allow it because they're hoping that you're gonna come and you're gonna like what you see and enjoy the community and you're gonna stay. And it happens. But so that's my own experience with like stringent, like uptight religions is Jehovah's Witness. Is that similar to Mormons, like as far as the strict nature of it, or would you say?
I don't have very much personal experience with Jehovah's Witness like teachings. Just the things that most people know, like they don't celebrate holidays, like things like that.
Yeah, like that, like
like I would definitely say comparable as far as like the rigidity. It's very, very formal, and there's a lot of tradition and expectation that goes into how people behave in the religion. But I don't know a lot of the details, but I will say, so that it's not just like bashing our, I will say, like from a higher perspective, I can empathize with everybody that has ever sought religion or even been raised into it and believed it, because I believe that that's part of like the hero's journey that we're here to all have as humans in our own unique ways, is to transcend victim consciousness that perpetuates the idea that anything we need is outside of ourselves. And before we wake up to that, before we start to get keen on finding all the different ways and subtle ways that we exchange power with the world in order to get something, before we wake up to that, something that promises salvation or being saved or some form of that is so appealing, to any part of victim consciousness, even pressed so deep down in the shadows, that has you feeling like you don't have all the answers or access to finding the answers, and some billboard on the fucking freeway says, call 1-800-JESUS, like we will save you. Of course that looks appealing, So like I have so much empathy for the people who have been in any sort of religious like I don't want to say brainwashing, that's biased, like, any sort of indoctrination, they've put themselves in that position because they're looking for something good. I think at the end of the day, everybody is always doing something for the most pure motivation to be loved, to be, connected the way that our souls all were before we came into this human form. And so I think it's a natural response to seek it out now that it's been created as an option in our cultures.
Yeah, and to be fair, the people that are actively involved in their church and inviting other people, it's not like they're inviting them to a cult. It's not like they're trying to brainwash them. They believe that there's salvation there. So why wouldn't I want my best friend to be saved too? Why wouldn't I want my best friend to feel this connection with Jesus or whoever it may be? So that's also comes from a good place,
Yeah. I think if any, very, very, very few, like a super low percentage of people who identify as religious are consciously aware of the harms that can come from it. I think if you're in that boat, it's because you think it's a good boat. And I think that there's something like admirable and altruistic about that, even if the more awake and aware reality is contradictory.
Yeah. Like, I mean, from my perspective, obviously you can't put all Mexicans in one religion, but for the most part, the majority I think are Catholics, and that's because I think the Catholic religion, as far as what it is now in present day, that's the one that they can tolerate the most because it's very minimal. It's very minimal. You go to church, once a week, if anything, and then you can still drink, you can still enjoy your party, and you can still do all these things for the most part. And then if you do slip up, you just have a confession and you start over. So that's the one that I feel Mexicans can tolerate, and you don't really have to like study your material. You really don't, and that's the difference I saw when going to a Christian church for the same reason. Being 17 this time and going for another girl to a Christian church. That's the first thing I saw when you went to the Christian. I was like, I respected it because they actually knew their shit. They knew the Bible, they knew verses, and like they knew it. And to me, it was very like art of warish. Like know your stuff. Know what you're gonna do. And from the Catholic Church, I went back to the Catholic Church looking like, man, we're kind of lazy. Like we don't do that. We just show up, yawn, and still probably hungover, half asleep, and someone goes up and reads the scripture for today, and we get up, we get down, we do the calisthenics, and we're out. We do this and we're out of there and we're saved, and we go to enjoy our Sunday meal or drink or whatever. And that's something that I feel like, I mean, look at the way that religion arrived in Latin America, right? It was forced on through colonization. So obviously, it was something where it was like, okay, it was a middle ground. Okay, we'll do the minimum, and okay, all right, we'll do the gestures, and that's kind of how I see it now. But when I was younger, I was actively anti-Catholic, actively this and that. Like you said, I was actively, F y'all, F y'all. But that's something that I feel like with time I've kind of mellowed out, and because no one has all the answers, so who am I to go and mock people for trying to find a way that speaks to them? So like that's how when you said earlier, you're gonna get weird. By all means, get weird. To me, there's no weird. There's no right or wrong really. So like that's something that by all means.